I know fraud has been obviously big in the industry for a while and it continues to evolve. So I'd love to hear more about your experience with looking out for fraud, what you're looking for, especially since I think each of you serve slightly different customers. So what does that look for like on your end, Jack?
It's actually very interesting because once I got access to SuperProtect, it made me reconsider a lot of things that I was looking at originally. And it also gave me a new tool that I was able to then say, hey, I've been using these guys for a long time and they're actually pretty good, or I've used these guys a lot. And now I just realized they share an address with 20 other carriers. Maybe this is some sort of like a super ego type deal where it's some sort of ghost carriers and the drivers are not on the insurance. And, it really makes you think twice.
Yeah, that's it's so wild how fast that evolves for everybody. Michael, how about you?
I've noticed the biggest factor being, we work with a lot of different carriers in a lot of different states, so we have to have a pretty big network there. And there's a lot of carriers that we'll work with on a consistent basis and everything will be great. Or there's carriers that we've worked with at the beginning of the year and then we haven't heard from them for a while. And then their reputation with us internally was always a positive one. But then they'll pop up on our Super Protect. And then you notice that their rating is now a 4 out of 8. And traditionally, right, we would have looked at them and we would have been like, oh, okay, great. We've worked with them many times, right? We'd still go through our whole carrier vetting process, but now it spotlights it right away where now you have to investigate into that carrier. So there's these things that normally wouldn't be highlighted that are now being highlighted because of Super Protect, which is very helpful.
How about you, Luke?
And we deal with a lot of high target vehicles that would want to get stolen. We've already had in a couple months a couple cases where we quickly saw that somebody's email and phone numbers changed or names changed within like a day or two. So clearly, like their account was taken. And then another thing I like is when you can see a high number of other shippers recently blocked that carrier. That's kind of like an indication of if you have 4 or 5 other people that don't want these people to even see your loads, maybe that's something to take into consideration.
Yeah, that's interesting how much of that data is like being flagged now, but I'm curious about before Super Protect, how are you guys vetting that or how are you keeping an eye out on those number changes or those ratings? Michael, you mentioned carriers that you would have previously thought were reliable.
Yeah, we always had a very strong carrier vetting process. So that's one part that we had. More than anything, the benefit that we've seen from Super Protect is it gives you an instantaneous snapshot of the overall standing of that carrier, right? So for us, still prior to that, what we would do is we'd have a carrier request a load. We'd verify them internally with our system, right, based on previous transports that we had done. We'd then look at multiple different platforms, see their overall ratings and standings on those platforms. We'd verify insurance, right? And that whole entire process is very time intensive. And so
Hmm.
we would have to do that with every single carrier before we'd actually go ahead and send the load. Now, instead of my team having to sit here and verify every single carrier just to come to the conclusion that, hey, company information's changed. Something's a little bit sketchy about them, right? They've gotten 6 negative reviews within the last month. Now all of a sudden, the rating will show up and it's a 5 out of 10, and you realize they've been blocklisted by 6 companies. There's been unusual activity. So those several minutes that we would spend on every single carrier adds up when you're talking about hundreds of carriers. So it just saved our team a lot of time with the whole carrier vetting process.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Jack, how about you guys?
So I think of just to echo what everybody else was saying, one of the biggest things about it is that every once in a while, and I'm sure all of us have seen this, is you'll get some sort of either a time critical load or a vehicle that's relatively expensive, and you're trying to move it and keep the customer happy. You're trying to move it with speed, and you're also trying to make sure that nothing happens to it, because I myself also work with some very, very high end vehicles. And what happens is you put the load out, and usually you're paying the right amount of money if you know what you're doing. And the first thing that happens is you'll get 2 or 3 requests right away, and all of a sudden you'll see and will automatically show you, hey, these people are not passing the muster, and I wouldn't even give them a second glance. Whereas if somebody has, let's say, is passing 7 or 6 out of the 8 or 9 fields that are available, I would then go ahead and do a deeper dive. But if you're going to show up and you're going to show up as like, that you're not even passing, that your insurance is expiring and your information just changed 3 days ago and all that stuff, and you're trying to take this Ferrari from me, I'm not even going to pay you any mind. So that then goes ahead and it saves me that extra, like Michael was saying, that extra 10 minutes of having to go and look up the company and go to, another platform and then look up the insurance and then go to SaferWeb and look up their inspection history. It just completely eliminates the bad actors right off the bat, which, number one, it allows us to feel a little bit more safe and secure when we actually do finally choose that carrier, because we have more tools at our disposal that are showing us the actual rating of the carrier. Because it's very easy nowadays for anybody to just sign up with the FMCSA as a carrier and get authority. Just because the FMCSA gives a company authority doesn't mean that they're operating with any type of integrity. And it's just something that we've seen over the last, I want to say year, it's been the worst that it's ever been. So this tool really helps you just eliminate those fraudsters in the first, let's say, 10 seconds. Like, oh, they don't pass. I'm not even going to click it to open it to see why they don't if they only have 3 or 4. It's just an automatic decline and they go right on the block list.
Yeah. Yeah. That also must, I mean, that's such a long process and laborious process. Sounds like for all you guys, but that must also save you so much time. Especially like you mentioned a Ferrari, those high value vehicles are obviously a higher target. So having that for your customers also must be a better customer experience too. So that's great to hear.